Hi guys and ladies, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisema Matsietsi. On this video, I'm sharing the information that I have collected while I was researching the Companies Act. And today we are going in understanding one of the type of the company, which is a public company. What does it mean for us to open up a public company? Let's look at all the differences coming up right now. Just to start off, we have 16 differences that we're going to be comparing all the companies with. Just a high-level view of all of those. We'll look at what is the definition all the way to who are the governing bodies, depending on a different type of company. And at the end of this video, I will be giving you a summary of all that I have spoken about, so that you can, give yourself, a nice high-level view. If you want to take a snapshot, feel free to take a snapshot at the end of the video so that you can know what it looks like. So let's start off. Before we start off, I have to say this. Just a little disclaimer that this video is just for general information only, and that does not constitute legal advice. It is advice that you should seek out your own professional advice on any concerns. At least we started with that disclaimer. We can now start jumping into it. The first thing that we're going to look at, what is the definition of a public company? It looks like Companies Act tells that the public company, out of the 160, 190 pages, it says this is a company that operates for profit. It's the first point. It is allowed to offer its shares to the public. All listed companies must be public companies, but not all public companies are listed on the stock exchange. So to clear it up, all the companies that are traded onto the stock exchange are called public because anybody can actually buy a piece of whatever is being offered into the company. This is where some of us, there's a movement of I own it, where people are saying, own what you consume. I'm using, say for instance, I'm using a Canon camera. I would buy shares into Canon if it is listed. If I drink a certain beverage, I would own shares in Coca-Cola because it's listed. So whatever I consume, I know that I have a big share of it. So what they're talking about is public companies that are listed into the stock exchange. Okay, the second one, let's just look at how is this company get incorporated. So it may be incorporated by one or more people. So you cannot just open up a company that has got no owner or that has got no director. As much as it's a public company, it has to be opened by one or more people. So the list can go on depending on how many shares you want to give out. So it doesn't really necessarily mean each share must have a person named to it, because one person can have more than one share, but we'll look at that one later. Registration process, you need two things that you have to remember when you register. First is the notice of incorporation. Is something else that you fill up with the CIPC. If you're in a different company, if you're in a different country, you might have a different body that has to put all that is required per company. So in this case, you go into the CIPC and then you fill up a form called COR 14.1. And the second thing, there's something called a Memorandum of Incorporation. I know when we do our masters or when you start your coaching session, the coach or your tutor or your sponsor would want that you sign a memorandum of understanding. So it's where we say we will make sure that we are on time, whatever we share will stay between us. That's memorandum of understanding. This one is called Memorandum of Incorporation. It's needed for you to incorporate a company. And the most common one is the COR 15.1. And then it has different versions. It has A up to E. So this one is where we will look at it a bit later. This is where you can say, what do you want to incorporate your company? But if you don't want to go into all that detail, this 15.1 is a general one that all the companies are allowed to adhere to. So if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to worry about this. But I will tell you about the danger of not making your own memorandum of incorporation. Okay, the second part is places of business. If you're registering within the business of within South Africa, you have to have a registered address within South Africa. So you cannot open up a company with head offices in China, cannot have a company with head offices in Zimbabwe. It has to have some address in the Republic of South Africa. Somebody, not knowing whether it was a scam or not, on LinkedIn reached out to me and said, I want to incorporate a company, I need an address, can I use your details? And I just said, no, you can go into CIPC and find out what is required if you're outside of China. So it became, you cannot trust everybody else online. So, but the requirement is when you incorporate a company, it has to be it has to have an address in South Africa. Something called annual return. This is where my accountants or my finance friends are more advanced in their understanding. But what it means is your annual returns must be filed within 30 business days after the anniversary of the date of incorporation. So if we incorporated today, the annual returns to say what have we done for the year within 30 days from today. Okay, if today is the 1st of May, by the 1st of June, we should have gotten back to say, how is the company doing? Is it still operational type of thing? But that is required within a year. From there, you go, where do you do the annual returns? That's why you're asking. You do it with CIPC. So the next one, we're talking about annual financial statements, which is not annual returns. Annual returns says, yes, I'm operating, I'm making 0 rands or I'm making 2 rands. Annual financial statements is where you are doing all of this nice things that accountants do that says what is your profit, what is your losses. So the financial statements must be prepared within 6 months of the financial year and in time to give notice to the AGM. So what happens is if I incorporate the company on the 1st of May this year, next year, by the 1st of June, I should give out a feedback to say, is the company operating? If I do give back to say, yes, the company is operating and is making 0 rands, and it's a public company, I'm given 6 months to prepare and take the annual financial results back to the public in what we call the annual general meeting, so that they can discuss the good standing of a company. But those are the two differences between annual return and annual financial statement as far as I'm concerned. It might be a little bit more technical, but I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. Next one, the 7th thing that we're looking at is a financial year. The issue here is when we say the financial year, we're saying if you're starting a year, you're registering a company on the 1st of May. It means if you decide to say, my company year end will end on the 31st of December so that you can have a full year. Your first year will have months that are starting from 1st of May up until the 31st of December. Your next financial year will start in January, not in May, but the 1st of January, the following year, until the 31st of December in that following year. What this means is your financial year must always be fixed. You cannot keep on changing to say, this year we're going to close off the financial year in October because we just made a big bonus. We want to close off the financial statement on a big high. We are avoiding the loss that's going to come through in November. Next year we're going to make our financial year end in December because we're waiting for the nice little bonus that's going to come to our company that's coming through in the 15th of December. So you can't do that. You can't just choose when do you want to close the year. If you close the year, you just pick one. If most companies might say we're going to close the year on the 31st of March. If that is the case, 31st of March every year is a close of a year. Most of us that are opening up companies, sometimes it makes it easy to just close on the 31st of December so that you have the 1st of Jan up until the 31st of December to operate your year. It's the same as the calendar year, but you are allowed to choose your own date. Then you can say, I'm bringing everybody else together. I normally pay out my bonuses in Feb, so I want to close the year in March so that all the cost that relates to last year has been accounted for. It could be your case for choosing a different date, but you're allowed to choose any other date as your financial year, and you can still go back and then change it according to S27. So next one is changes to the financial year, which is the next point that we're talking about, to say if you want to change the financial year, you are given the chance. You can't just say, oh, since I picked 31st of December, I will die with 31st of December. You are allowed to change the date, and the company may change its financial year and by filing a form called the COR25 with CIPC, which must comply with the requirements set. Whatever they tell you to do, you have to comply with it. The next thing that we have to look at is when you file your financial results or financial statement in that financial year, is it required for you to have your finances audited? The answer is you have to have them audited because it's a public company. So when you close the annual return, when you say, yes, I was operating, and then within that 6 months before you do your financial, you give out your financial statements, you have to have them audited. So this explains all our friends that are auditors, when do they really get busy? They get busy between an annual return date to the financial statement date. That's where they start with the auditing to say what has happened. Those are the external auditors. The internal auditors can do their job anytime if the company is quite big. So we will, I think our auditing friends on the channel can actually comment and tell us much more what they do on their side. From our side as financial analysts, we just stop at sending out the annual statements, and then we stop there, not with the auditing process. Is the company secretary required? Yes, the company secretary is required. Like I said on the previous video, I used to think that a secretary was a receptionist, but a secretary is somebody who is responsible for making sure that the company is in order. So it doesn't mean a receptionist. It means a company secretary, and we can talk about that one if you show interest in knowing what is the difference between a receptionist and a company secretary, and why do we need a company secretary for a public company. The next one is the annual general meeting required? Remember, this question goes in previously to say your financial statement must be presented in the annual general meeting. If you're asking yourself, is the annual general meeting then requirement or is it an option? The answer is, it is a requirement. You have to have an annual general meeting 6 months after you have closed off your year. So you cannot run away from it. Your annual general meeting is a set date also. So when you do your budgeting, your full calendar, you say, I'm going to close off the year here, I'm going to have my auditors here, I'm going to send out the financial statements here, and I'm going to have a annual general meeting within this period so that I can take my finances to the public. This is where you see on the news, if you're watching those financial channels, this is where you see big bells going in when somebody else, sends out their financial statement, and there's big balloons. All of us, previously I never used to care much about it. I was just worried to say, how much is my bonus? But now you get the whole idea why there were bells and whistles. The next one is, what is the minimum amount of directors that are required? So according to Companies Act, you are required to have at least 3 directors. You cannot just open up a public company with no director. You have to have 3 directors that are in place in that company, and they can all take different roles into the company, as you would see later on if you are interested. Next one is the minimum number of members. Yes, now that's a tricky one. Like I said on the previous video, if you haven't watched it, what's the difference between a member and a director? You must remember, a company can have an unlimited number of members. You can have 20 members, and out of the 20 they can decide to say, okay, let's just pick our directors, and then they can pick a minimum of 3 directors, and those directors together form what is called a board of directors, which they make a decision for what? For the members, or what people that we call those that own shares, if I just put it in plain simple. So you can have at least 1 member and 3 directors before you start. So you can have other 2 directors if we're just being facetious. The other 2 directors might not be members. Only 1 director could be a member and a director, and then you start the company. Okay. The offering of securities, like I said on the previous video, whenever we see securities, let's think about shares. The offering of securities to the public, yes, the chapter 4 of the Act allows us that we have to offer securities to the public. What does chapter 4 look like? I gave it to you right there. It talks about application and interpretation of the chapter to say what does the whole chapter talks about, which is chapter 4. Yeah, it gives out offers that are not offers to the public, and it tells you about the standards for qualifying employee share scheme for if you want to leave something for your employees. Advertisements relating to offers, general restriction on offers to public. This is where if you want to have your BEE shares, if say I want to restrict my shares so that non-black people cannot get shares to the public. Requirements concerning prospectus. This is the little booklet that you send out for people to buy shares. Secondary offering to the public, in case we know about everybody else talking about IPOs, but we hardly ever hear about the secondary offering to the public. You've made your first call and people are buying shares, and then now you're coming back for the second time to say come buy shares again. Consent to use of name in prospectus, to say what name do you want to use when you're sending out your little brochure. Variation of agreement mentioned in prospectus. Liability for untrue statements in prospectus. Can you see it comes back to bite them? If they said that here they're gonna be making super profits, and then in the prospectus, and you come back here they stole your money, you can take them to the highest courts to show them that they lied to you in the prospectus when you bought the shares. Liability of experts and others, people like myself, if we're coming there and we're an expert, we are telling you to buy shares into this company, what can you do if we lied? It makes that video that I said sometimes professionals also lie. If you haven't watched it, I'll leave the link for you to actually watch it, but there is liability for those aspects. Responsibility for untrue statements is prospectus, time limit to allotment or acceptance. Allotment, big term, but it's just when you give out the portion of land, it's called a lot. So allotment is where you are splitting the land. So they're using the same term into splitting the shares. It's like cutting a cake. So when you take a slice of a cake, it's in proper English, in the English here, it's called allotment. You say, what is your portion that's given to you, and how long do you have to accept that portion that has been given to you? Restriction on allotment, avoidable allotment, minimum interval before allotment or acceptance, conditional allotment if prospectus states securities to be listed. So that's just looking at securities or public shares. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is keeping of company records. Are you required to keep the company records? Yes, you are required to keep a company record. The fact that you had employees there, you can't just say, we don't have an employee, we're going to ban their file because we don't like them, he's got funny teeth. No, you have to keep those records because it's a public company. The last one is to say, which are your regulatory bodies? Your regulatory bodies, 2 of them. First one is the CIPC, and the JSE, which is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. In our country, we only got one stock exchange, which is called the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I think previously we used to have so many: South African Stock Exchange, Johannesburg Stock Exchange, whatever stock exchange. But throughout the years, if my history served me right, they are all combined, and we're only dealing with one stock exchange for public companies, which is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. There's still other exchanges out there, but for public companies, is the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So I hope you guys understood all of this and you got it right. If you did not understand, don't worry. On screen right now is a summary of all that we have spoken about. You can take this as a snapshot so that you can know more or less what is required for you to have a public company. If you want to invite all your friends, you want to convert your stokvel into a public where everybody else can join the stokvel, this is what is required from you. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching this video. This video is not alone, it's a series. The next one is still coming, just to talk about a different type of company. But if you haven't considered subscribing, I would urge you please to consider, because you've watched the video for this long. It's so simple, you just click subscription. Otherwise, you can also follow us on our website, which is www.beinganalyst.co.za. We also have a podcast called Being an Analyst, both on your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, we are there. Apple, we are there. Anywhere else, we are there. Stay tuned for the next video.